What's up everybody, Commander Sanctum here, and today we have a brand new deck tech using Teysa, Opulent Oligarch. Teysa is a 2/3 human advisor for 1 white-black that has Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, investigate for each opponent who lost life this turn, and whenever a clue you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white and black spirit token with flying. This ability triggers only once each turn. Clues, clues, clues. Teysa loves clues. In this deck, we're going to exploit this, and focus on Investigate and Clue tokens specifically to try to win the game. This can be done by using cards that interact with clues directly, or via cards that care about tokens or artifacts either entering or leaving the battlefield. With that, let's get into the card highlights. While Teysa herself makes clue tokens, we'll likely need more generation sources to make this theme work. With that in mind, we have a number of good options to do so. Wojek Investigator is a good option as it has the potential to make multiple clues at each upkeep depending on your opponent's hands. Warnog Writer's Chaplain can also make multiple clue tokens depending on your opponent's choices, with Warnog incentivizing them to investigate so they don't take damage. Thorough Investigation also works very well, since Teysa will be making evasive tokens that can be used to attack and thus generate clues. It also has the added benefit of allowing you to venture through a dungeon whenever you sacrifice a clue, which may be multiple times a turn once the engine is up and running. Search the Premises can be a good defensive method to generate tokens, especially since it will trigger for each creature attacking you, not just for whenever a player attacks you. As we could see from the previous slide, there are a good number of creatures that have a mana value of 3 or less, making Bygone Bishop a good choice as well, though this will depend on your specific deck list as to how effective it is. Like Thorough Investigation, there are a number of cards that have some sort of clue-specific ability tied to them. Merchant of Truth, Persuasive Interrogators, and Tamiyo's Journal are good examples of this that not only generate clues through investigation abilities, but also have some sort of ability with the clues generated. In the case of Merchant of Truth, all clues have Exalted, making it so that if you want to attack with Teysa or some other creature alone, it can potentially get massive depending on how many clues you have. Tamiyo's Journal, on the other hand, allows you to tutor up a card for a small price of 3 clues, which will be relatively easy to get to in this deck. Finally, Persuasive Interrogators is a new card that can be an absolute powerhouse in games, as sacrificing a clue lets you give 2 poison counters to an opponent. This means that sacrificing only 5 clue tokens can make a player lose the game, making Persuasive Interrogators arguably the best and most efficient win condition in the deck. There are also a number of cards that care about sacrificing artifacts, which works perfect with clues. Disciple of the Vault and Agent of the Iron Throne are great examples of this, with Agent of the Iron Throne being a step better as it also triggers with creatures and makes each opponent lose a life, rather than a single opponent like Disciple of the Vault. Marionette Master has now become the quintessential artifact sacrifice card, as the life loss to the opponent is dependent on Marionette Master's power, which will likely always be at least 4 due to the Fabricate ability. This would mean that sacrificing only 10 clues, which may be rather doable depending on how the game is going, can kill an opponent outright. Similar to the previous cards, there are also ones that care specifically about tokens leaving the battlefield, which pairs well with Teysa since she makes creature tokens alongside the clue tokens. Nadir's Nightblade is an excellent choice for this, with the added benefit of also gaining your life. Mirkwood Bats is especially good as it also triggers when creating a token. Its other side does only work with sacrificing tokens, as opposed to them simply leaving the battlefield, but the creation effect more than makes up for this slight downside. To help maximize Teysa's Investigate ability, we need to make sure we are damaging each opponent on every one of our turns. One of the best ways to do this is with cards that do area of effect damage on regular intervals, whether that be on upkeep or via some other common action. Drana's Emissary and Creeping Bloodsucker are 2 great examples that do this on upkeep, taking care of Teysa's requirements right at the beginning of the turn, so you don't have to worry about it later. Ayara, First of Locthwain, is another great example that triggers whenever a black creature enters the battlefield. This should be relatively easy each turn, as simply sacrificing a clue with Teysa out will create a 1/1 black and white spirit that fits the requirements for this trigger. Ayara is also great as it can be used as a card draw engine for these Teysa tokens as the need arises. Since we'll likely be creating a number of creature tokens with Teysa, we have a few options to make these tokens even more effective. Inspiring Leader is great as a powerful anthem effect for all of our tokens, making our attacks even more brutal than they normally would be. Divine Visitation is phenomenal, as it can turn these simple 1/1 tokens into 4/4 angels, allowing us to make an even more impactful board presence. Though it is important to note that it is a non-bow with Ayara that was mentioned previously, as the tokens will no longer be black. Finally, Thelise Reverent Medium can be a great engine to make us even more spirits than Teysa can pump out, helped even more due to the fact that Thelise only cares about tokens, not just creature tokens, being created, which there will be plenty of with all the clue token generation cards in the deck. Lich Knight's Conquest and Reprocess, two cards that allow you to sacrifice any number of artifacts for an effect, are great with Teysa, either as a reanimate effect with Lich Knight's Conquest or card draw with Reprocess. Since we're already making a large number of clue tokens, which are artifacts, being able to turn those into creature reanimations or more efficient card draw in mass is a great use of the tokens. Since both of these cards also say that you sacrifice the artifacts, any sacrifice specific abilities, such as Mirkwood Bat's token sacrifice ability, will still trigger after these cards resolve. Finally, there are a number of good utility cards that work well with Teysa. Academy Manufacturer is a quintessential card that fits into any deck focused on making clues, treasures, or food, as it allows you to make one of each whenever any one of them are created. Mondrak Glory Dominus will allow us to double the amount of clues generated from any investigate abilities, as well as double the spirit tokens made by Teysa's ability, both of which are exactly what we want for this deck. Card Clan Ironworks is a great sacrifice engine for artifacts, not only to trigger said sacrifice effects, but also to help generate us mana when we need it the most. Here is an example deck list utilizing all the previously mentioned cards. Additional cards include a few more artifact sacrifice effects like Bartolome del Presidio and Dreg Recycler, a few more card draw effects that work well with 1/1 spirit tokens in Mentor of the Meek and Welcoming Vampire, and some more cards to get consistent damage on your opponents each turn in Corpse Knight and Blind Obedience via its Extort ability. Teysa Opulent Oligarch is a nice little engine card that can work efficiently at pumping out clues and or creatures as needed. Suffice it to say, Teysa's effectiveness will be highly dependent on the ability to generate clues at a regular interval, either via Teysa's own investigate ability or supplementary cards that can make them on their own. One downside to this deck, and a clue-focused theme in general, is that black is rather bad at making clues. In fact, there's only 3 black cards in this example deck list that can actually make clues, other than Teysa, and one of those is both black and white. This makes us pretty reliant on white for actually making the clue tokens. Thankfully, white is rather efficient at this, being the second best color to do so behind blue. Regardless, this does mean that our actual clue generation cards are somewhat limited, so we will be highly dependent on actually drawing and casting those cards. Teysa's investigate ability can help offset this, however, so on average, the deck should be able to generate tokens well enough and at a consistent pace to remain viable. When the generation engine is running like a well-oiled machine, however, this deck can be absolutely brutal and can generate such a staggering board presence or pump out damage at such a rate that it can overtake a game completely. This is certainly helped by cards like Persuasive Interrogators and Marionette Master, which can end the game pretty much on the spot in some cases. If you're looking for a good, but not overpowered, deck that's all about clue tokens, then this may be just the deck for you. I hope you enjoyed watching this deck tech on Teysa Opulent Oligarch. The full deck list outlined in this video can be found at the Architect link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Magic content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.